Welcome to the Guiding Brands podcast with your host and chief guide, Karen Vick. This is a podcast for service-based small businesses who want to get a handle on their marketing so they can attract and gain new customers. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Guiding Brands podcast. I am so excited for today's podcast because I'm going to be talking to one of my favorite people in the world. I call him my biggest fan, and I am his biggest fan. Yes, forget everybody else out there. But this person I've known for, wow, it's almost 15 years now. And we've worked on a lot of projects together, both personal and business projects. And we've seen each other's business grow. We help each other, mentor each other. Yeah, it's a mutual fan club, and I hope he thinks the same. But no, I know he does. So without further ado, I want to welcome David Muir to the podcast, so the Guiding Brands podcast. David is one of those Renaissance people, men, guy, I mean, he's just, I'm gonna read from a list of things, and then I'm gonna have David just fill in the blanks. But David is an artist, he's an entrepreneur, he's a community leader, who has a history of bringing people together. When you talk about David, I forget the list now, I'm just talking. When you talk about David, you talk about him in terms of who he doesn't know, because he seems to know everybody, and it's just one of those people that's just a joy to be around because he loves people, he loves life, and it comes out in his work. He's an author, two-time author of a series of books, coffee table books called Pieces of Jamaica. And he takes our homeland of Jamaica and presents it to the world in such a beautiful, loving way. And I'm besides myself for just having him here. So
That's
I'm just
great.
going to have him talk about himself some more. So just fill in the blanks for us, David.
So, Karen, is always beautiful. Thank you for having me. I don't know how much blanks there really need to be filled in. The truth is, like you said, I am a lover of people, and I like to sort of be involved. I do like to be a part of creating great works. Some people describe me as being a perfectionist. I see myself in the opposite. I just see myself as someone who just loves being creative. And sometimes it leads to things that people consider perfect, but I'm never aiming for perfection. I just want to make sure there's a standard that, at the very least, we want to be very good. Mm-hmm. And so all the projects that I participate in, whether it's something that's self-generated because I want to see the project become a reality, or if I'm helping anyone in their projects, I want it to be spectacular. I want things to really just to give people a sense of how wonderful the world is, and because that's the way I see it, and I want everyone to see things through my viewfinder. So I'm very much in love with showing people the bright side of life.
Nice. And I've seen that since day one. I've built every website for David's personal photography business since 2010. And I think there's like 5 or 6 versions of it. Been there, for the first publication of Pieces of Jamaica. And what comes across is this love of people. He loves portraiture. He loves showing people in their natural setting, their natural selves, their personal vibe, and it shows in his work.
And what's funny, Karen, to cut you just a little bit, is that when I started doing that work, I didn't actually realize that this was a specific type of marketing imagery that's called lifestyle photography. I just like things to be natural. I didn't realize that I was doing something that actually has a space and a place all for itself. And it was as a result of doing this work that I love and enjoy that I realized, oh, well, look, people actually want to buy these types
Mm-hmm.
of images because it's a service that is important, definitely in marketing and in business in general. So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, lifestyle photography happened to just be something I love to do, and it ends up being something that can help to feed myself.
So then, so okay, this brings up, to mind this question: what made you get into photography? I mean, David, you were doing
I've
other
done a lot of
things before,
I
you know.
have done a lot
You,
of things.
yeah, yeah.
The crazy thing is I've always loved photography. I started using photography as a hobby slash way to interact with people because again I love people and photography is a great bridge for connecting with people. And so I've been using that as a tool all my life since I was, maybe 11 years old, so it's been a few years.
Yeah.
And and having said that, I never thought photography could have been a business. It was during, I guess what happened was that my best friend, a painter and an artist, mixed media, he also does photography and so on.
Mm-hmm.
He was investing in a camera, and the prices seemed astronomically high to me at the time. This is, I don't know, 20 years ago. And I was, criticizing his spending this money on a camera. And I said, the only way I could spend that type of money on a camera is if it's going to make me money. And I'm like, because otherwise it doesn't make sense. And it was in that space that I sort of realized, well, okay, I do love photography. I'd like to have my own camera, but if I'm going to do it, I got to make something back. And so
Mm-hmm.
in that space, I started to figure out, well, what's my market? If I'm going to invest in a camera, if I'm going to invest in being a photographer, what can make some money for the investment?
Mm-hmm.
And the funniest answer to that question wasn't really clear for some time, but it was really a great and fun time trying to figure it out. So
Mm-hmm.
I did take the plunge and I did go all in without really knowing for sure what would work. And I knew that what would help to work is if I did both photography as business and photography as art. And I
Mm-hmm.
am separating the two because even though art can be the business, I never envisioned the art side being the primary business. But I did want to say if I'm going to go forward and really try to make photography something that I can earn, uh, a significant portion of my income and livelihood, I would need to pair it with being artistic, not just being a person with a camera, but
Mm-hmm.
being someone that was telling stories with my art, with my photography.
It sets you apart, you know. It
It
helps set
Yeah,
you apart because there is a million and one photographers out there, including those of us that only have our iPhones. You know.
exactly.
Yeah, so it sets you apart. And I remember those first exhibitions, at yeah, and seeing your work and seeing it evolve over the years, and
Yeah,
it's
it has
yeah,
evolved a lot.
yeah, yeah,
but
yeah, yeah, pretty
it's
cool.
great though. It's a lot. It's to sort of see yourself develop and to see your artistic vision grow is
Hmm.
beautiful. It's really, I was in a conference earlier, and part of the dialogue was experience really matters.
Yeah.
People don't understand necessarily how much in different fields, but in terms of photography, experience is really crucial. And even if someone has the greatest uh, easy tool like a cell phone or what we typically would call a point and shoot camera, meaning you don't have to learn the settings. All you have to do is press a button and you'll get an image. Even if you're going to utilize that strategy to get imagery, you still have a lot that you need to figure out because there are a lot more parts to getting
Hmm.
the best picture than just than
All
just
right. Hold
pointing the
that
camera
thought.
at what you want. Okay.
Before we
Okay.
go deep into that, I wanted to ask, and share with the audience, what you're doing now. I didn't in my introduction mention anything about Island Syndicate. So, just so the audience
Okay.
has a sense of what it is that you do, now, yeah.
Well, we do a lot. So I'm a business partner in a company called Island Syndicate, which is actually on my shirt.
Yeah.
And Island Syndicate offers a lot of what we call content creation services. So we provide video production, image creation, from multiple perspectives, and so we not only have in-house talent, but we partner with others like Karen Vick and others in our field that we can create the best of. So even if, in my team, I only have one cinematographer and one still photographer and one graphic designer, we can pair up our team with members of other teams to create a bigger opportunity of,
Experience.
right, doing something for our client base. And so what Island Syndicate really does is that it helps people to get their message out. So if you have a concept as a business owner or as someone who works at a municipality or in a nonprofit, a NGO, or so on, and you know what you want to do, but you aren't able to achieve it on your own, we're that solution. We're like a mini advertising agency because we are mini, but we definitely are nimble and we're able to help people to get their vision to become
and
reality.
that vision comes out not just in video and still photography,
Oh no,
but
we
in
do books,
books.
magazines,
Yes.
newsletters.
Hmm.
Anyway, if you have an idea about doing something, we can help you to get to the finish line. It may even be that we're referring you to someone else, but we have enough uh, lean and trim partners that we don't have any jealousies. There's no issues. If we don't do the service that you're looking for, we can easily point you in the direction of who does and who can help.
Right. Hmm.
But yeah, we definitely do a lot of different types of
So
um
you're like a business resource then, you're an
definitely a
organization.
good resource.
You're a resource. You're more than just a marketing agency. You're a resource, which
Definitely,
is
because
cool.
yeah, the
Yeah.
truth is that we help people to get their solution, whether it's done in house with us or we send you to someone who we think can do a better job at
Hmm.
your particular solution. But
Hmm.
yeah, we do a lot of work for municipalities. It seems at this time that's our primary client, but we've done work for, very, very small businesses to very, very large businesses,
Hmm.
and throughout the United States and even outside of the United States. So it's been good. We've
Yeah.
had lots of good
Yeah.
opportunities.
And in addition to Island Syndicate, David has his hands in a number of other projects, if you will. Um, you know, I won't go into all of them, but I wanted to say too, one project, or a couple of the projects. So there's what was it? Geez. The cultural
Islands,
products
yes.
that the cultural projects that you produce, music, you know,
Like
um,
reggae
yeah,
genealogy.
reggae genealogy.
Yeah,
There's at uh, Art Basel. I know you're always
oh
involved
yeah.
in
So we
exhibitions.
do Let There Be Reggae. We do
Yes.
Reggae Real. We do have a lot of different types of projects. So
Hmm.
absolutely. And
Yeah.
honestly, I'm a servant to the community as well. So I sit on a lot of boards, more than I probably should admit to. But so don't tell. But yeah, I sit funny enough on a photography school board. I sit on what they call the MAC, which is the Marketing Advisor Committee for Broward County or for Fort Lauderdale. I sit on that committee. And I could go on. I will not say all.
Yes. Yeah.
But yeah, I
There's a
also sit
lot.
on the board for Island Space and I am on the board for Jamaica Men of Florida. No, 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 no. No,
No,
like,
no, no. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, but I
Okay.
happily do these things because it's a part of how I feel good about myself and how I can help others.
Well, the reason why I actually went so far into these questions is about you and what it is that you do is because I want the audience to recognize something. There is something called personal branding, and that's something that David embodies. And we're not telling you to go out and get 50 million jobs and do different, be on all these boards and things like that. But what you see is a common thread throughout everything that we just talked about, in terms of his community service, his love of people. It shows in his work. As a photographer, and it shows in his work with Island Syndicate and all of the other organizations that he's a part of. And so when someone is thinking of something to be done for whatever reason, David could probably more than likely be one of those names that pops up, if not the first, because he has that brand. He has that personal brand that says he's community and he's for people. So those of you that are out there that are thinking about, your personal brand, this is what a reflection of it is, and he himself can't define the brand. We do. We're looking on as an audience, and we're seeing how it is that he interacts with us and the things that he produces. And this is what personal branding means. So, all right. So now we're going to get into the meat of what this podcast episode is really about. And it's going to be, the title of it is Get in Focus. How photography can impact your small business marketing. This is a podcast for small businesses, and that's what we want to speak to. We want to make sure that you get some value from every episode. And so, David, my first question relating to this is, how important is photography to small businesses marketing, now?
It's super important. So Karen, like there's a lot of old sayings in the world, and one of the very most popular old sayings is first impressions matter.
Mm-hmm.
And so we always have to be trying to work on how we make that first impression. So photography is a great tool to assist you in making an impression, first, second, third, and so on. And so I would highly recommend that everyone that has any connection with business endeavors, whether it's small or large, be cognizant of how people view your business, your brand, everything about you, because those things matter a lot.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, if I'm going to go, I love food and I go to a lot of restaurants. But if in my mind, the food is unattractive or the restaurant space is unattractive and it's not set up well, I don't want to eat there. I don't want to go back there.
Mm-hmm.
So that's an example of what I mean by you always want to have people thinking of you as being attractive. It doesn't mean that attractive is the same for everyone, because
Right.
attractive can vary greatly. And so you could have something that's very small and be attractive. You could have something that's very big and be attractive. But it's about how you present these various things. And so when you talk about photography and how it impacts, everything about photography impacts, but it's really about what's the story that you're telling.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you want to be great with imaging and be great with branding your business, think about that sort of big picture. What is it? If you stand far back and look at yourself, what is the image that you have out there in the public? And if you can't do it for yourself, ask people
Yes.
who are friends or family to take that step back for you and say, looking in, what do you see?
What do you see? And also,
And
I'm
then you
sorry.
use the imagery. Sorry, just
Yes.
to
Mm-hmm.
tidy
Yes.
it up.
Mm-hmm.
The imagery is how you now can reflect a different perspective than what is that
Yes.
vision that people would already have made of you, because now you have that extra opportunity to tell a different story if it's not already great. But if it is already great, then you can now reinforce this viewpoint. Oh, their business is attractive. Their business has a good brand. It has a good viewpoint. And so we have to be careful when we talk about doing imagery that we now look at all the details. It's not
Mm-hmm.
just the angle. It's not just the type of camera that you're using. It's about what are the elements that fall into the view. What is in the foreground? What's in the background? How do you represent your logo? How do you represent
Mm-hmm.
space around the things in the view? But I'll let you were going to ask, and I just wanted to complete that thought, because it's so many factors that you have to be cognizant of. And you have to really pay attention to all the littlest things, because you could have a great picture and something's
Yeah.
dirty or misplaced in that view. And that one little thing can skew the vision of your business.
Yeah.
So you want to
Most
be real,
definitely.
you want to be really careful
Careful.
about, yeah.
Yeah. And what you just shared also speaks to what this podcast is about, and what we've interviewed, Stephen Sued, and a number of other people about branding and the perception that you give, so that first impression is a big deal,
It is.
so what story are you telling with that photo? If you are a restaurant, the example that David gave, the food needs to be attractive. Your website needs to reflect that. If you're posting on social media, if you've created a menu that you're putting in people's mailboxes, perception is key, because your reasoning behind doing all that work is to attract people's attention so that they can you know take part in whatever it is that you have to offer, whether it be food or some service. And so imagery, it does, it's really
And Karen, the
important.
thing is, it's important for any type of business.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what you're
Yeah.
doing, because it makes such a big difference how
Mm-hmm.
people perceive the business from the very beginning. Because if you set a negative impression to start, it's an uphill battle
Difficult.
to change that. But
Mm-hmm.
even if you now decided, okay, I got off on the wrong foot and I now want to change it, you have to be very sure that you know start going in the right direction with the change. Because a lot of times people say, well, let's just put a lot of pictures. It's better to put 2 or 3 really well done pictures
Mm-hmm.
than to put 10 pictures and have 3 of them not look great, because then again you're allowing that negative impression to either to stick around or to
Mm-hmm.
creep in. It's better to have 7 pictures and eliminate the bad ones than to have 10 pictures and have 3 that are,
Yes. Yeah.
not so great. You really
Yes.
want to make sure everyone that you use to share your business and your brand and all that you're doing, that they all are really meticulously clear and send the same message.
Yeah, yeah. And in that light, David, how, in your experience, have you seen photography help a business separate themselves from their I can't
From
speak
competitors, yes.
competitors? I'm leaving all of this in.
No, it's
Yeah.
it's all
Hmm.
good. So
Hmm.
there's a lot of ways that I've seen it done, and I think that one of the best ways comes back to what I was mentioning earlier at the top of the call, which is what it's so simple, but yet it is critical, which is this whole idea of what's candid, what's naturally occurring. It doesn't necessarily have to be, but it needs to seem that way. So it's this
Hmm.
whole idea of,
Authenticity.
exactly. So how do we approach that? So this is this special type of photography that I say ends up being now my specialty. I didn't even realize that I was going in this direction. But anytime you're doing any imagery of a business or something that tells this particular type of story, this is very, very important. That if I look directly at the camera right here now, you know that I'm trying to say I'm paying attention. I'm looking right at the camera. I'm giving a particular view. But if I'm looking over at something else, then I'm also giving a different perspective. So I'm showing you that something else has my interest. Not you has my interest, but something else. And that is important in the photography. If I'm doing a picture and I want you to, let's see what food, I'm going to stick with the food theme, but I want you to like this particular item, then I'm going to give you a picture of me focusing on this item rather than me looking here and the item
Hmm.
beside me, because I'm not connected to the item anymore because I'm paying attention to
To
you.
you. Hmm.
And these are the things that people don't often think about. So when you do your imagery, you want the imagery to be, oh, look at me. I'm focused on this particular item. And so I'm telling a story. Me, item, we're connected. And with you seeing that connection, it's going to give you that sense. I want to know more about that item. And that's what we call lifestyle photography, where you're teaching people that in just general life as it occurs, we have interest in something other than the camera. So the camera is just
Mm.
there to document something else that's happening in the world and to
Mm.
show you that you can also enjoy that same thing. So if you see a picture of me doing, skiing on the beach or riding a wave and I'm on a surfboard, it's to say to you, can you imagine yourself on that surfboard, on that wave, enjoying that same space? And that lifestyle photography is what I do every day. And it's about knowing how to document it and also knowing how to inform the models, whether they be real people or people that are hired to play a role, how to let them show that particular interest so that others will feel that attraction to the product as
Hmm.
well.
And that's also key for you as a photographer to identify those moments candidly too, because you do a lot of events, and
Absolutely.
I've used countless of your photographs in work for other clients, and so many of them can come to mind where it's the expression on this person's face in the photo that they're not even aware that you're taking the picture, but you've
Absolutely.
captured a moment and delivered a message in that moment. And so it's very important. And that's how, to answer the question about, your competitor, how you can differentiate yourself is, through photography, is making sure that, your photos don't just focus in on the product either, or
Right.
don't focus in on you only. It's gotta
It's
capture
got to
both
be
of
a,
them. It's gotta capture both
yeah.
of them in one space.
A
So
lot of times people just take pictures of products and think that that's going to sell the
yes.
product. And it's so much more important to show people enjoying the product
Yeah.
in a candid way, not like I'm looking in the camera and biting the product, because it's too fake. It's like people
Yes.
won't believe that that's
Yeah.
actually a moment.
It's not authentic.
You want things to
Yeah.
seem and be much more natural. And so
Yeah.
whatever the product is, it could be, the tennis racket that you're selling now. You've created a new special racket and you want to show people enjoying that or winning a tournament with that racket or whatever it is that you are doing. There's a way to showcase your product in a
Mm-hmm.
photograph, in imagery that gets that message across. And so you need to be thinking about, how am I getting the message to my potential client about the product or service that I'm providing?
Mm-hmm. For sure. And this brings me to the next question, is that it's about mistakes. What are common mistakes that people make, and you just identified a few in terms of placement, in terms of positioning, in terms of where you're focusing. Sometimes we see something in the natural, we're seeing something happening, and we know that if we took a photo of it, it would actually be ideal for what it is that we're doing. But it's how we actually capture the photo, portrait versus
Yeah.
landscape, those can you talk a little bit about some of those common mistakes that you see people,
I
even professionals, not just the amateur
No,
with the phones.
everyone makes
Yeah,
mistakes,
yeah, yeah.
even the professionals,
Mm-hmm.
and even David. And that's the thing, is that I've learned from a lot of mistakes. So sometimes having experience is really great. I'll speak to a few things, but I'll say this first. When I did my first book of my photography, when I was taking the pictures that were going to be used in the book, although they're 99% all candid and exactly fitting into a particular, let's just say, storytelling technique, I did not consider one of the most important things, which is that I needed to take the pictures with a wider view. So if I needed to crop vertical
Mm.
or horizontal, I would have that space to do it, because I was in my mind taking the imagery just for its immediate use. And that's one of the biggest flaws I find in a professional photographer, because they think they know how the image will be used. And so they make the mistake of taking the picture that it can only be used in one format.
Mm.
And the chances are that if you just made it a picture taken a little further back, you'd allow for the ability for it to be either as a vertical or a horizontal in the future, because you never know
Know how it's being
how a
used.
client may need a particular
Yeah.
image, or how you, the client, may want to use the image in the future. Because not so long ago, social media, for example, needed imagery to be almost 100% of the time horizontal.
Mm-hmm.
Then came, things like Instagram, and then it was a square, and then came reels and things like that, and now it's all vertical. So you have to be willing to future proof your picture, so that
Mm.
you don't have to now recreate the pictures over two
Yes.
years later or 6 months later and spend the same, even if you don't have to pay for it if you're using your iPhone. But it takes time and effort and energy to get pictures. And so there's always a cost to having to redo them. So it's best if you pay attention. Now, in terms of other areas, again, since I mentioned cell phones, I love cell phones, and they're really accurate at getting pictures. And they actually are even better than a lot of the professional cameras, because they auto correct for you. And so those things are great, but they do have limitations.
Mm-hmm.
For example, cell phones do not automatically set themselves to take pictures at what we call a fast shutter speed. So if there's activity going on, you're going to see motion blur or things that don't accurately get represented with a cell phone, because it doesn't have it set to automatically stop motion.
I
It's going
see.
to, yeah. So these are things you need to look out for. You could go into the manual settings of your cell phone and make that adjustment. But if you're not aware of it, it might be best, so that you don't waste that moment, to have someone who has the technology and the know-how to actually capture the imagery, so that you don't end up losing the opportunity because you didn't have the right gear to be used.
Right. 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 Okay. So there, placement, understanding, the moment, the shot that you're trying to get, and thinking of future proofing your photos. I never thought of that, thought of it that way, but
It's
that I
so
love that,
critical,
future
yeah.
proofing your photos, and the settings of your device, whether you're using a professional camera or you're using your cell phone, it's really key.
I do
Yeah.
want to add one more,
Hmm.
Karen. This is
Sure.
actually really important, and people never think of it. But this item that we both have on our face,
Yes.
glasses,
Yes. The
they
lighting,
this
reflections.
and
Yes.
the style. So
Yes.
these things, if you can remove them from the imagery, it makes a big difference, because they go in and out of style. So now there is a
Mm.
particular style of glasses, and if you take the picture now, 5 years from now, people will say, "Oh, these are old pictures," because the eyewear
Yeah.
gives a sort of knowledge of when that picture was taken. If you look at pictures of the 70s and you see those big glasses, oh my gosh, nobody wears those glasses anymore. But things
Yeah.
like eyewear and certain styles, even hairstyles,
Hairstyles.
we have to be
Mm-hmm.
cognizant of what your models wear, and how, what are those are always important factors in
Mm-hmm.
any imagery, because if you're going to use images for a long time, you want to be sort of let's just say neutral in as much as you can, so that you don't date the pictures too quickly.
Mm-hmm. As a designer, one of the challenges that I've always had over the years is clients will present photos, for a printed piece. We need a brochure created, and images that come through to me, they're they're not of
Quality.
yeah, and it could be a beautiful photo, but the resolution is off. It's not high enough that you can actually print it. So can we talk a little bit about that, David? What are
Sure.
what are small businesses supposed to do, when their graphic designer says, I need a high resolution photo of your office space to be used in a brochure? What does it mean? What does it mean?
So I'm glad you're asking. It's a question that has many misconceptions. People do not necessarily understand what high resolution means or how to even, let's just call it, maintain high resolution. Because I
Mm-hmm.
could have a picture in high resolution and I send it to you via, let's just say, WhatsApp.
Mm-hmm.
Immediately, it's
It
been,
loses quality. It's been
yeah,
reduced.
immediately. It went
Mm-hmm.
from a very large file with all the resolution and gets to be crunched and, or what is it called, compressed into a file and no longer can be printed because the mechanism of having these tools, they have as a part of their system a way to, let's just say, reduce
Reduce
the
the file
quality.
size,
Right.
and it's really about file size. A massive,
Correct.
because.
So let me explain just
Mm-hmm.
officially. So when people talk about resolution or what they call for printing DPI, dots per inch, essentially when you have a file that has information, it's literally about how much dots per inch are recorded in that file. And what is the case typically from, let's just say, from a raw file, which is a particular type of file format that we capture images in, a raw file has information for every single microscopic dot throughout. And then when you convert that raw file into a JPEG, the JPEG is then a different file type. And what happens with the JPEG is that it starts to make assumptions. If this color is green in this dot and the dot beside it is green, it doesn't record two dots. It only records one dot, and it doesn't record a second bit of information until it changes. So when you get to the place in that picture that's orange or red, then it starts recording a new dot. So already you start to lose quality in terms of saved information. And that's just going from what we consider a raw format to a JPEG format. Then when you go from a JPEG format, that's now like pretending 300 dots per inch, and then we're going to a format where it's now 72 dots per inch, the amount of information saved again becomes much less. And so if you're going to reproduce the work, there is not enough information to get a high quality image. And it matters most when printing. When you're looking at an image on the screen, on your phone, on your computer, those images only require a little bit of information by comparison to when you're going to print.
Print it.
So
Mm-hmm.
for print pieces, you do always need to have a high resolution, meaning that it has a lots of dots per inch for every for any size that you're going to
Yeah.
produce. And people, again, sometimes when you use a professional camera, for example, most of the imagery is recording originally at, let's just say, it's not exact, but let's just say about 30 inches tall by about 45 inches wide. That's typically what your camera will give you. But then people will change that 45 by 30 file to a 6 by 4 file. That's a tremendous
Tremendous.
reduction in the file. But people think, oh, I only need it to be this, 4 by 6 image I see on my screen. And they're not thinking if it gets printed in a magazine or in a
Mm-hmm.
book or on a billboard, then you now need a much larger bit of information to be able to reproduce the work and have it remain at a high quality.
I've never
So,
heard it explained quite that way, and I love it. I mean, those of you that are listening, if you're not watching the video and you're listening, you're missing David's expressions and his hand movements as he draws, dots per inches and and so on. But
right,
I bring this up because of the work that I've done over the years and the challenge in getting images for print in particular. And it's just to clarify for everybody. So, um, images that are used on social media and your web pages and so on can be as low as 72 dots per inch or 72 DPI, a lower resolution. And so
right,
if you try to take that 72 DPI and you want to use it in a printed piece, which requires at minimum 300 dpi, you're now having to stretch the image. And so that's why you will often see photos that are blurred, they look grainy, that's where that comes from. So those of you that are watching and listening, be mindful of that as you go. And that affects now the quality of the work that you're putting out there, of the marketing pieces that you're creating. Your competitor may have better images. They took the time to have the correct quality and file size and type and so on. And you have a image that's of lower quality. You may have better products than they do, but their photos are better. And guess what? You're now at a disadvantage as well, because at first impression, you lost it, whether it be in a printed piece or something that you used on the web, because you can,
And just a
yeah.
word of note as well, Karen. A lot of times, photographers will take pictures, professionals, and they'll deliver to the client what they think the client wants, which is a lower resolution. And
Mhm.
because the client is unaware that there is a higher
Yes.
resolution available, they then use what they've received and take it to be printed or take it to be
Yes.
used in a different way. And what they would probably be best served at is asking the original photographer, can you send me the high resolution file,
Exactly.
or can you send me even the raw file? Because just even converting from the raw file type to what's considered a JPEG is a monster reduction in quality. You're talking about typically about 6 times the quality change just from a raw file to a
Mm-hmm.
JPEG file. And people are sometimes unaware. When you say, oh, send me the JPEG, you're basically saying, send me a much lower resolution
Mm-hmm.
than was originally documented. Now,
Yeah.
your phone only records in JPEG, so you don't have that with the phone. But when you're using a professional camera, you have the option for a much higher resolution file than a JPEG file. And it
Yeah.
saves lots more information.
And with the iPhone, just I'm an iPhone user, and those of you that, if you weren't aware of this, by default your images are HEIC. Don't remember what the acronym stands for, but you can actually change that in your settings so that your images are produced as JPEGs. And you can also tell the phone to produce or share images that are full high resolution rather than the more compressed version of it. But it still loses some quality when you're sending it in an email, or you're texting it to somebody, or you're posting it to social media. They're accounting, like social media platforms like Instagram and Facebook, they're accounting for their files, their servers. And so every image that comes up, they have to account for that. So that's gazillions of megabytes of space. So they compress it even more so that, it can be shown on whatever device you're looking at it at. So those are things to keep in mind. So when we talk, David, you just touched on something when you talked about, how other photographers work and so on. So if I'm a small business owner and I want to do a photo shoot for my new website, or my marketing brochure, or my menu, and for my restaurant or whatever, can you give the audience some guidance on how to select what are things that they should be looking for in a photographer that they're hiring, a professional photographer? Because not all
That's a
photographers are the same.
no. So, I mean, the truth is that's hard for me to say. I am biased because I do think experience is one of the most important things that you should be looking for. If someone has never done something before, while I'm always happy to say give somebody a try, you definitely want to go for someone who knows specifically what it is that your goals are and has done it before for a previous client. That would be my base
Mm-hmm.
recommendation. So if you're looking for, I don't do on a regular basis. Not I don't do drone photography. I own a drone and I do it occasionally for fun and for some other purposes. But if I'm going to do drone work, I'm going to call a professional and say, hey, I actually have 2 drone photographers that I use routinely because I know that my drone work is not the best. And so and again, I don't have the experience level that they have. So part of what I would always recommend is experience. And then I think the second part that I think is maybe as important, maybe even more important, is a photographer who has an understanding of how to reach the people that you want to reach. So I think part of the interview process of your photographer should be something along the lines of, help me to understand what it is that we're going to do to be able to make my product attractive to my audience. So
Mm-hmm.
it requires you sharing with that photographer your vision, and then having them sort of explain to you how they're going to help you to achieve that goal. Because if they aren't aware of how to communicate with your particular intended audience, then I don't think that it's a photographer for you. It requires an understanding of how to reach your audience. And so I think that's as important as the experience, that sort of understanding and re-explanation
I
of
like that.
the goals.
That's an excellent point. That's an excellent point. And you also, you want to look at their work, go check them out. Go
Yeah.
online, see what they've put out there, the quality, look at reviews online to see what people are saying about them, because you can end up with an inferior product. And you yourself may not know or realize that it is until it comes into the hands of a graphic designer, like myself,
Right.
and then
And
we're like,
it's like, ah.
what am I going to do with this? There's something obstructing something or something in the background. Now we have to manipulate the photo. We have to do things to actually get what we want to say, what the message is that you want in the photo. So it's very important that you think of that. So yeah, good point. Good points, David. So okay. So then the other question then is, okay, I'm a small business owner. I'm new. I'm trying to set up my website. I'm trying to create marketing material, for an event or whatever. I really don't have a huge budget. How do you? My recommendation is always, and yours is always going to be, talk to a professional, have a professional photographer, but it's not always possible.
Right. So if you
So
if you
how do you
can't
help them?
afford a professional photographer's budget,
Hmm.
I do think that there are other ways to accomplish your goal. But I still think that it begins by talking to a professional, because just at the very outset, they're going to give you questions to answer that would be helpful in guiding your own thinking. So, for example, someone will come to me and ask me about, like you mentioned, an event.
Hmm.
Like, if I'm shooting an event, I'm going to ask for a shot list. When somebody will say, well, what's a shot list? What do you expect to be on a shot list? I want to know your goals. How are your post event photos going to be utilized? Is it that you're going to be using it for reporting internally? Is it for media? Is it to attract guests to future occasions of events of this nature? And just those questions alone that I'll ask you are going to help to guide you to understand what I need to do,
Hmm.
because someone else is showing you, hey, I've done this before. I understand what's going on. And I'm never afraid to help people, because it means when the budget is around, they're going to come back because they
Yeah.
understand that I know
And you
what
provided
needs to be
them
done.
with,
Right.
guidance. Yeah.
So I'm happy to guide anyone in their journey now, helping them, even if it's going to be to use their cousin to take the pictures. And, can I give them tips to help their cousin? Sure. Because at some point, again, when budget allows, they'll come back to me and
Hmm.
they'll say, I remember you helped, you know, it
Hmm.
wasn't maybe as good as we hoped, but we at least got help. Now we're
So,
ready for your level. We're happy to
yeah. So
move
in
forward.
asking those questions of a professional photographer, when you don't have a huge budget, to hire one, you can actually get an
They'll give you
understanding of what you need to do
what you need to do.
when
Right.
you're taking the photos yourself, or somebody
Definitely.
who is less expensive is, you can guide them as to what you want from it.
Yeah,
Okay.
I
I
highly
like that.
recommend, no matter what it is, always consult a professional, because
Hmm.
they'll give you, even if they don't even want to talk to you, just by what they would ask you about your goals will help you to understand what you need to consider to achieve your goals.
Yeah,
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 it's really important.
most definitely. And technology is, yeah, it's very important. We use it every day. We walk around with these devices. We use computers. We're on social media. We use technology for different reasons in our work and so on. And I know it's influencing photography, and it has since you started, work as a
Big time.
professional photographer. Is there anything that you're seeing now, that people need to be aware of, in terms of what's coming, or a trend that you see, or anything that relating to technology and photography, and what people need to be aware of?
I don't think there's anything that I can think of that I know people need to be aware of. What I think is great, I don't have an Apple. I have a Google phone,
Android.
Android, sorry, but it's
Yes.
actually made by
By
Google.
Google. Yeah, by Google.
And,
Yes.
and so my it's what do they call it? Pixel. They call it a
Yes.
Pixel. I
Pixel.
never
Hmm.
remember, but I have a Pixel, and so Pixels are, they're very smart. They're smart for photography. You are able to do some tasks that to me are, in a sense, mind-boggling. And not really, because I get it. But you can edit pictures with the Google Pixel really
Hmm.
well, and you are able to, it will it will guide you when you're taking a
Hmm.
picture. It'll say, "Hey, this is a better angle. Consider
Hmm.
this." So I don't know that those are anything that's very revealing or special. I think at the end of the day, what is, I believe, really one of the most important things to understand about any device, because I'll say this, and I tell professionals or aspiring professionals all the time, is those things do not matter if you don't learn what's available to you. So study your tool, whether it's a
Hmm.
professional camera or it's a phone. Read the manual, or try out all of the features, because the chances are you have a lot of ability to do things that you're not aware of because you haven't sort of gone into the weeds of what does my tool allow me to do. And so that's
Hmm.
really my recommendation. I think that's the best thing to look out for, is not just get the iPhone or get the whatever it is. What's the name of that?
Android
Samsung or
or
whatever.
Samsung. Okay.
Yeah, don't just do that. Read up about it. Like
Hmm.
get into the weeds of what can your tools be used to
Yeah,
accomplish,
because
because
listen,
it
with
because they
these cell
really do have
phones and
some
these cell
great
phones,
features.
the cost of them too, in
That's
comparison,
part of the
you
cost.
talked about the cost of a professional camera earlier, and now, so you're spending money on these devices. So learn the device, and what it is that you want from it. If you're going to take a lot of photos, then yeah, you need to be aware of, of that. Yeah. So I want to know, I guess, just let me start over. Let's see. I am the chief guide of the Guiding Brand podcast, right? And I consider every guest that comes on the podcast a guide as well. And so I always end the podcast by asking you to be that guide for my audience. What advice would you give people, to sum up this conversation? What advice would you give people, small businesses, when they're thinking about, their marketing, and how photography will help them with, attracting their audience, making that sale, what advice would you
Well,
give as a
let me
guide?
tell you that one of the best bits of advice I could ever give with regard to photography is storage. So it's something that people do not think
Hmm.
enough about. But how are you storing your imagery? And what are your tools for storing? Do you have a backup system? Do you have enough memory? But then the most important part is the organization of. If you 3 months from now in your business need to go and find the image that you did this month or 3 months ago, for a particular campaign, or for, how did you label the file? How did you label the folder? How did you, and then 10 years from now, how can you find that folder? Is it by, the color of the chair in the picture? Is it by the time of the year? Are you going to remember the time of the year in 10 years? you have to really think about how to future proof all of the work that you do now. And I think that because imagery is something I've been working for so long, I used to have a different way of storing images many years ago that now I find it hilarious that I thought that that was going to be something that was sustainable. It was sustainable for,
A
maybe for
period of
10
time.
years,
Hmm.
but it's no longer sustainable today because I do so many more pictures. And so I do think that a big part of how you are going to best navigate how you utilize any imagery is how do you save it and how can you find it back. And I
Hmm.
think it's really, really important that you give that some serious thought. And if you need tips on that, call me.
Call
I'm
David.
here for you. I'm here. I can take the pictures, but I can also help to guide how you save and store and how you find the pictures. Because people call me just yesterday evening, somebody called me, "Oh, David, I need pictures. I need some old pictures." How old do you call old? Is that last year? Is that 5 years ago? Is that 50
Yesterday.
years ago? Right. It's like, give me some more parameters.
Yeah.
Give me a sense of. I've had people, call me 10 years later. Do you have the pictures? I still have the pictures from 10 years ago. I have
Yes.
all pictures I've ever taken. People are like, really? That's amazing. Yeah, but how do I find your pictures? Did I
Yes.
store it
Exactly.
by Guiding Brands? Did I store it
Yes.
by Island Design Studio? Did I store
Yes.
it by, and this is what is critical. So think not
Hmm.
just about the images that you need, but how do you get to interact
Yeah.
with them over
Yes.
months and years and time?
I agree because all of our phones, we just snap these pictures and it stores them. If you use a Google phone, an Android phone, Google Photos is connected to it and the images get, backed up there, but you're still having to search through a ton of stuff,
Yeah,
now, yeah, I mean, Google Photos will help you. You can search by face or describing where you were or something like that, but you still need something a little bit more detailed to manage
yeah.
that. So
And
yeah, and
you have to remember where you were and how to describe it.
yeah,
And that's
yeah,
not always easy to
exactly.
remember.
And I'm going to add to that, David, one other thing that people could do in addition to, storing is storing different sizes of photos. So if you have your low resolution versus your high resolution within those folders, within those moments that you're saving, those folders, categorize them as such so that
Delineate,
it's
yeah.
easy for you to pass them on to somebody that you're working with or you yourself to use whatever setting that you're using them with. So this was fantastic, David. I mean, we could talk forever.
Yeah,
There's so many things that we
there
could
are
talk
so
about
many.
this, but I think this was really valuable for the people that I know that I run into every day on a day-to-day basis or who I've worked with who we need photos in our work. Like you said, everybody needs photos for their businesses. Whether you're a restaurateur, you're an attorney, you're an artist, you're whatever, you need
Whatever.
photos
You do.
and I know that yes, it's easy. You can get stock photography, and we didn't talk about stock photography, but that's out there. But it's still not telling your story when you don't use your photos. So using them the right way, making sure that the placement is correct, that you're looking at the angle that you're taking it at, and thinking future proof, like David said. You got to be able to crop the image so that you can get it in a portrait or landscape mode, or saving your files, future proofing, making sure that you can find them, the settings on your devices, and eyewear. That was a big thing for me
It,
is
it
eyewear,
it's
as
such a
somebody,
big deal.
yeah,
Yeah.
somebody that wears glasses. I think about that, sometimes. So yes. So David, you mentioned, that people can call you for tips. They can get help, from you. And I know you're an open book. You share, and that comes from your love of people. So, David, where can people find you? If you could share all the places, all the things, that you
Oh,
use for people to find you out
there are
there.
a lot of great places, but I'm on all of the primary one. I think maybe the best places would be to first, come to my website, islandsyndicate.com. Likewise, I would say that LinkedIn is great for business. So I'm easy to find. I'm David I. Muir. I am David I. Muir on all platforms, I think, on Instagram, on
Mm-hmm.
Facebook, on X, formerly Twitter. All of these, I think I'm all David I. Muir. And, but yeah, reach out. I'm very easy to find. Uh, David I. Muir, David I. Muir, David I. Muir.
Okay. And one last question. Are there any services, products, and so on that you at Island Syndicate are promoting right now, or you want to tell the audience about something that you offer? I mean, we're in
So,
South Florida.
so I
So,
definitely think
mhm.
it's wise to mention that, we definitely are always offering a lot of different services. But I think one that most people do not know is that we produce books. So if you have interest in doing a book, it's something that you could definitely talk to Island Syndicate about. We recently did a book last year for the city of Miami Gardens. We did their 20th anniversary book. We're currently in production for the 120th anniversary book for the city of Dania Beach. We have also done magazines for a number of different municipalities. We've done Destination Lauderhill. We've done a series of magazines for what is called Visit Lauderdale. That's a tourist arm of Broward County. So we've done a magazine called Explore for them. And we've done it as a 10 series, 10 in the series. And we've done that in multiple years. So we've done that more than once for Broward County. And so we do newsletters. We do newsletters also for the city of Lauderdale. We've done newsletters for the city of Miami Gardens as well, and so on and so forth. So we have a number of different municipalities that give us work to simply communicate with their residents.
Mhm.
And we also do a lot of event photography. So if you have a concert or a there's so many different types,
Conference,
conference, yeah, all of
expo.
these different things. We're happy to do them, and we will tell your story for you. All we need is an interview where we can sit down with you and understand what your goals are, and then we will take care of the rest. We like to
Awesome.
say we have a turnkey operation. We just need to understand what your desires are, and then we can simply produce them for you.
Excellent. Excellent. Thanks a lot, David. And I thank everybody for tuning in, whether on the audio podcast or on YouTube or wherever you see this video. Thank you so much. And I hope you found value from this. We just ask that you just hit the subscribe button if you're on YouTube, follow us on any podcast platform that you're using, and leave us a comment. Tell us, how we're doing, good, bad, or indifferent. I would love to hear so that we can make this better for you and for other small businesses out there. Thank you so much, and catch you next time. That's all for this episode of the Guiding Brands podcast. I look forward to sharing with you again next week, so please don't forget to subscribe to the podcast and leave a review. Thank you, and bye for now.